"Do as you wish, cowboy," said the tied-up Apache woman. But what happened next stunned everyone. The late afternoon sun hung low over the small frontier town, painting the dusty streets with golden light. The wooden buildings cast long shadows, and a faint wind stirred the dry dirt, sending small clouds swirling around the worn wagon tracks. Life here was simple, but not easy. Every day was a struggle to survive, to earn a little money, and to stay safe from the dangers that lurked beyond the town's borders. For many, the greatest danger came not from the land itself, but from people like the outlaw gangs who roamed freely through the open plains, taking what they wanted without care for the law. In the town, whispers spread quickly. The latest rumor was one that chilled even the bravest men. A notorious gang, known for its ruthlessness, had captured a woman from the Apache tribe. Her name was not widely known, but the few who had seen her described her as strong, brave, and sharp-witted. Even though she was now a captive, she did not show fear. The story of her courage traveled faster than the gang itself, reaching the ears of every person in the town. Mothers whispered it to their children, shopkeepers mentioned it quietly to their customers, and old men shook their heads in awe, wondering how anyone could be so fearless in the face of such danger. Among those who heard the story was a young cowboy. His name was Samuel, though everyone simply called him Sam. Sam was not the tallest man in the town, nor the strongest, but he had learned to read people and situations with unusual skill. He was careful, observant, and clever, qualities that had kept him alive on the frontier when others had fallen to reckless actions. He rode a plain, strong horse named Dusty, who had been his companion for several years. Together, they had faced harsh weather, wild animals, and a few small conflicts with troublemakers, but nothing as serious as what he had just learned about the gang and their captive. Sam had grown up hearing tales of outlaws and Native American tribes, stories that were often filled with exaggeration, fear, and legend. He had seen some of the harsh realities of life himself, the occasional skirmish between settlers and gangs, the struggle of families to protect their homes, and the tension that always lingered in the air when lawlessness threatened to reach the town's borders. But this situation felt different. The woman was not just a random victim, she was someone people admired even in captivity. And the gang, well, this was a gang that had no respect for anyone, law, or human decency. Sam knew that if he wanted to help, he had to act carefully, or the consequences could be fatal. He saddled Dusty with quiet precision, checking the reins, the saddle, and the small pack he always carried with essentials: a rope, some dried meat, a flask of water, and a small revolver. Though he hoped he wouldn't need it, he knew that danger could appear at any moment on these trails. Sam had grown accustomed to the feeling of carrying responsibility, not just for himself, but sometimes for others who were caught in situations they could not control. And now, with the thought of the Apache woman in his mind, that feeling pressed heavily on his chest. He had a choice: to ride into danger or to do nothing and wait for the gang to leave or make a mistake. As he rode out of town, the buildings behind him seemed to shrink in the distance, and the open plain stretched endlessly ahead. The horizon was a mixture of browns and golds, with distant hills rising like silent sentinels. Birds called faintly in the sky, and the wind carried the scent of dry grass and distant water. Sam kept Dusty at a steady pace, moving cautiously along the trail. He thought about the woman and the courage people said she had. If the stories were true, then she was no ordinary captive. She had a mind of her own, and perhaps even a plan that no one could guess. Hours passed as Sam moved through the wilderness. He followed tracks that he hoped would lead him to the gang, but he had to be careful. Outlaws were dangerous and unpredictable, and one mistake could cost him his life. He spotted signs along the way: broken branches, footprints in the dirt, and the occasional glint of something left behind. Each clue brought him closer to his goal, but also reminded him how tense and fragile life could be in these parts. Finally, as the sun began to sink toward the horizon, Sam came to a narrow canyon. The walls were steep and jagged, with shadows that could hide almost anything. He slowed Dusty, scanning the rocks in the ground below. There, in a small clearing at the bottom, he saw them, the gang members laughing and shouting carelessly, and the woman tied to a post but sitting upright, her eyes sharp and alert. She did not struggle violently, nor did she plead for help. Instead, she watched the gang with a calm, steady gaze, as if measuring every move they made. Her presence alone seemed to carry a quiet power. Sam dismounted quietly, tying Dusty to a nearby tree. His heart raced, but he reminded himself to stay calm. He had faced difficult situations before, but this was different. This was a test not only of skill, but of patience, judgment, and courage. The woman's eyes met his from across the clearing, and for a brief moment there was a silent understanding. She was not helpless. She had her own strength, and perhaps even her own plan. He considered his options. A direct confrontation could end badly. He did not know how many gang members were in the canyon, and they were armed and dangerous. But the woman's calm composure gave him hope. Maybe, just maybe, they could work together in some way to outsmart the gang. He stepped carefully, making sure to stay out of sight, and whispered a quiet greeting to her. She nodded slightly, acknowledging his presence, but did not speak. Her eyes, however, seemed to say, "I know what I am doing. Are you ready to help, or will you hesitate?" As the sun dipped lower, casting long shadows over the canyon floor, Sam realized that this moment was the beginning of something far larger than he had imagined. The danger was real, but so was the opportunity to witness courage, to act with intelligence, and to perhaps change the outcome of a situation that could have ended tragically. He took a deep breath, preparing himself for whatever might come next. The silence of the canyon was almost complete, broken only by the occasional caw of a distant bird and the soft rustle of the wind. In that quiet, tense moment, Sam understood something important. Courage was not always loud or obvious. Sometimes it was quiet, patient, and calculating. Sometimes it was measured in the way a person held themselves, even when surrounded by danger. And sometimes courage required the cooperation of others, an understanding that strength could come from both action and trust. He stayed there for a long moment, watching the gang and the woman, thinking about the next step. He knew he had to be clever, careful, and quick. The story that had reached the town, the story of a brave Apache woman, was real, and now he was part of it. With a final glance at the woman, Sam prepared to move. He felt a mixture of fear and determination, excitement and caution. Every step from this point forward mattered. He could change the course of events, or he could fail. But one thing was certain: he would not turn back. Not now. Not when courage and intelligence stood so clearly before him, tied to a post but unbroken in spirit. The sun finally disappeared behind the horizon, leaving the canyon in a dim, golden twilight. Shadows grew long and mysterious, and the air felt heavier, charged with the promise of what was to come. Sam tightened his grip on the rope in his pack, adjusted his revolver, and whispered to himself, "It's time." The canyon was quiet, but the quiet was heavy, almost as if the rocks themselves were holding their breath. The outlaw gang moved carelessly in the clearing below, laughing and joking as if the world belonged to them. They were rough men, with worn hats, dusty boots, and rifles slung across their shoulders. Their movements were confident, but Sam noticed small tells, hesitations, the way they looked at each other for approval, the way they never quite paid attention to the edges of the canyon. Every detail mattered. Every detail could be a weakness if one knew how to use it. Sam crouched behind a jagged rock, feeling the rough stone press against his chest. Dusty, tied to a tree a short distance away, stood quietly, ears twitching at every sound. The cowboy could hear the faint rattling of the gang's gear, the soft creak of leather, and the occasional muttered curse. Above all, he could see the woman. She was tied with a rope around her wrists, sitting upright with her back straight. But it wasn't the rope that made her impressive, it was her composure. Her head was held high, and her eyes swept the clearing like a hawk watching for prey. She seemed calm, yet her presence radiated strength. "Do as you wish, cowboy," she said, her voice soft but carrying clearly across the small distance. Sam's ears perked up. The words were almost casual, but the tone held a challenge. It was not a plea for help. It was a dare, a test of his courage and intelligence. The other men didn't notice, too busy boasting about their capture, too sure of their own power. But Sam understood instantly. She was not helpless. She was assessing him, judging whether he was capable of helping or whether he would hesitate and fail. Sam swallowed hard. The words echoed in his mind. "Do as you wish." It was a reminder that in this moment his actions mattered. Every decision could change the outcome. If he acted too quickly, the gang might notice, and the situation could turn deadly. If he hesitated too long, they could harm her or escape before he could intervene. Patience and observation were key. He studied the gang, noting how they moved, where their attention wandered, and the spaces between them that could be exploited. The woman shifted slightly, just enough to show she was aware of every detail. She didn't struggle violently. There was no need. Her calmness was her strength, and Sam realized that the gang had underestimated her completely. They believed she was powerless, that the ropes in her captivity made her a victim. They were wrong. She had her own mind, her own strategy, and possibly her own plan to turn the situation to her advantage. Sam considered his options. A direct attack was too risky. The gang outnumbered him, and even if he managed to reach the woman, a single mistake could lead to both their deaths. He needed a distraction, something to divide their attention long enough for her to act, or for him to create an opening. As he crouched behind the rock, he noticed a pile of loose stones near the edge of the canyon. A well-thrown stone could startle the gang, draw some of them away, and create confusion. But it had to be precise, and he had to time it perfectly. The woman's gaze never left him. It was steady, calculating, as if she were silently communicating. "Are you ready? Can you follow through without hesitation?" Sam felt a surge of respect and admiration. He had faced dangerous situations before, but this was different. She wasn't just a victim. She was an equal in courage and intelligence. Together, they might have a chance, but only if he trusted her instincts and she trusted his. Minutes passed slowly, each second stretching into what felt like hours. The gang continued their careless banter, unaware of the silent planning happening just out of sight. Sam moved a little closer, careful to keep the rocks between him and their view. His heart beat steadily, but his mind was alert, calculating every angle. He had learned long ago that on the frontier, survival depended on attention to detail and careful timing. And now, every detail mattered more than ever. Finally, he made a subtle signal, a small wave of his hand toward the woman. She nodded almost imperceptibly, the faintest movement that confirmed she had understood. There was no need for loud words. They communicated through observation, through shared understanding and trust formed in a moment of crisis. Sam felt a rush of determination. This was the moment where courage, intelligence, and timing would combine, and the stakes could not have been higher. He picked up a small stone from the ground, testing its weight in his hand. Dusty shifted slightly behind him but remained quiet, trained to sense danger without drawing attention. Sam aimed carefully, considering the wind, the distance, and the position of the gang members. With a quiet, precise motion, he released the stone. It sailed through the air and landed near a horse tied loosely at the edge of the clearing. The horse bolted, kicking up dust and causing a loud clatter. The gang reacted immediately, startled by the noise. Some cursed and ran toward the source, others shouted to regain control. In that split second of chaos, the woman acted. Using the strength in her arms and the sharp edge of a nearby rock that she had subtly maneuvered within reach, she began loosening the ropes around her wrists. Sam watched, amazed at her speed and precision. She was clever and prepared, taking advantage of the distraction he had created. The situation shifted rapidly. The gang members were divided, some chasing the frightened horse, others looking for the source of the commotion. The woman, now partially free from her restraints, kept her movements quiet but deliberate. She glanced toward Sam, her eyes conveying urgency and confidence. It was a silent message, now or never. Sam knew he had to act, but he also understood the importance of letting her take the lead. Her courage and intelligence were central to the plan. As the seconds ticked by, the tension grew unbearable. Dust rose in the clearing, mixing with the golden light of the fading sun. The gang shouted at each other, trying to regain control, unaware that their captive was no longer passive. Sam moved a little closer, ready to assist if needed, but careful not to expose himself to unnecessary risk. Every muscle in his body was tense, every sense alert. He could feel the weight of responsibility pressing on him, but also the excitement of witnessing someone demonstrate true courage in the face of danger. The woman finally freed one hand completely and quickly cut the rope binding her other wrist using a small knife hidden cleverly in her clothing. Sam's admiration deepened. She was not only brave, but also resourceful and intelligent, able to act decisively under pressure. He realized that the stories from the town had not exaggerated her abilities. She truly was exceptional. Now partially free, she used the element of surprise. She lunged at one of the closest gang members with quick, precise movements, knocking him off balance and causing him to stumble into another. Chaos erupted in the clearing, with the outlaws scrambling to respond. Sam took a deep breath and prepared to step in if necessary, knowing that timing was critical. He had created the distraction, but she had executed the first part of the escape brilliantly. In the midst of the confusion, the woman turned to Sam and nodded again, signaling that it was safe for him to act. He moved quickly, using the rocks and shadows for cover, and positioned himself where he could intervene if any gang members noticed her attempt to escape. His presence added to the pressure on the outlaws, forcing them to divide their attention even further. The coordination between them, though silent and improvised, was perfect. It was a moment where trust, courage, and intelligence intersected, and the result was extraordinary. As the sun dipped lower, casting long shadows across the canyon floor, the clearing became a scene of controlled chaos. Dust swirled around the fleeing horse, gang members shouted and gestured wildly, and the woman moved with the skill and precision of someone who had thought through every detail. Sam could feel his heart pounding, but he also felt a sense of awe. He was witnessing a remarkable display of bravery, cleverness, and determination, a combination that could overcome even the most dangerous adversaries. Finally, as the dust settled slightly, the woman stood upright, fully freed and ready to act. The gang, still disoriented from the sudden disruption, had no idea how quickly their captive had turned the situation to her advantage. Sam took a moment to catch his breath, realizing that this was just the beginning of a larger plan. The next steps would require even more courage, careful thinking, and precise timing, but for now, the first move had been brilliantly executed. He glanced at the woman, who met his eyes with a mixture of calm determination and silent respect. There was no need for words. What they had accomplished together spoke volumes. In that moment, Sam knew that the woman was not only capable of surviving this ordeal, but of shaping its outcome. The outlaws had underestimated her completely, and that mistake would prove decisive. The canyon grew darker as twilight settled in, but the sense of anticipation remained. Sam understood that the challenge was far from over. They had made their first move, but the real test of courage, intelligence, and strategy was still ahead. The woman, once a captive, was now an active participant in her own escape, and together they would face whatever dangers the gang might present next. The canyon floor was quiet now, but tension still hung thick in the air. The gang members had been caught off guard by the woman's sudden action, and though they were regaining their composure, it was clear that they had underestimated her completely. She stood tall, freed from her restraints, and her eyes scanned the clearing and the surrounding canyon walls as if measuring every possibility. Sam watched from behind a rock, heart still pounding, but feeling a growing sense of respect and trust for her. She was not only brave, she was intelligent, able to think and act quickly even in the most dangerous moments. Sam knew that rushing forward now would be foolish. They were still outnumbered and the gang had weapons. A single mistake could cost them dearly. He stayed low, keeping behind the rocks, while observing the gang's movements and behavior. The woman, noticing his careful watch, gave a small, almost imperceptible nod, signaling that she was ready to plan their next move. The calm authority in her demeanor surprised him. She was clearly used to thinking strategically, even under pressure. The woman gestured subtly toward a narrow side path that led deeper into the canyon, partially hidden behind tall boulders and thick brush. She had already considered their escape routes, and she was inviting Sam to follow her lead. It was clear that she had been observing the gang and the terrain for a while, even before he arrived. Sam realized that the stories he had heard in town about her courage were only part of the truth. Her intelligence and foresight were equally remarkable. Sam moved cautiously toward her, making sure to stay out of sight. He felt a mix of fear and admiration. This was unlike anything he had faced before. He had dealt with dangerous situations, but rarely had he encountered someone so composed, so capable, and so confident under pressure. Together, they now formed an unspoken team, connected by the shared goal of escaping the gang and surviving the perilous situation. Once they were close enough to speak quietly without being overheard, the woman whispered her plan. She had noticed that the gang members tended to cluster in small groups and often left gaps in their attention while distracted. Using these gaps, she intended to lure them into a trap of sorts, something that would give them the upper hand and increase their chances of escaping the canyon without confrontation. Sam listened intently, impressed by the clarity and practicality of her strategy. She considered not only their immediate escape, but also the need to minimize danger and avoid unnecessary violence. The first part of the plan involved creating small distractions to divide the gang. The woman indicated several loose rocks on the canyon ledge above the clearing. By carefully moving them to make noise at different points, they could confuse the gang and make them think that more people were approaching from multiple directions. Sam nodded silently, understanding that timing was crucial. One wrong move could alert the gang to their presence and ruin the plan entirely. They moved quietly along the edge of the canyon, keeping low behind boulders and brush. Sam followed the woman's lead, impressed by her agility and awareness of the terrain. She was careful not to make any unnecessary noise, adjusting her movements to avoid loose stones and dry brush that could crack underfoot. Her attention to detail reminded Sam of how dangerous but effective a well-thought-out plan could be, especially in a situation where brute force alone would not be enough. The first distraction worked perfectly. The woman nudged a rock down the canyon wall, and it clattered against other stones, rolling near the edge of the gang's clearing. Several of the outlaws jumped, shouting and drawing their weapons, only to realize that the noise had come from above. They split into groups to investigate, leaving smaller clusters that were easier to navigate around. Sam and the woman moved swiftly, quietly, and carefully, taking advantage of the confusion. The second part of the plan involved using the canyon's natural features to their advantage. The walls of the canyon were jagged and uneven, with small ledges and crevices that could be used as cover. The woman led Sam to one such ledge, which offered a clear view of the gang below without exposing them. From this vantage point, they could watch the outlaws' movements and choose the right moment to make the next move. Sam realized that she was thinking several steps ahead, considering not only the immediate danger but also the paths of escape and the potential reactions of the gang members. As they crouched behind the ledge, the woman outlined the next stage of the plan. They would wait until the gang members had separated, then create another diversion by releasing the frightened horse from earlier. The sudden movement would force the gang to scatter and chase the animal, giving Sam and the woman the chance to slip past unnoticed. Every step was calculated, every action deliberate. The coordination between them, though silent and improvised, was precise. The moments of waiting were tense. Sam could feel his pulse quicken with every sound: the clatter of a distant rock, the shout of a gang member, the soft rustle of brush in the wind. The woman remained calm, her breathing steady, her eyes scanning the clearing below. Sam admired her ability to maintain focus under such pressure, to stay composed even as the danger loomed so close. He realized that courage was not only about facing fear directly, but also about staying calm, thinking clearly, and acting strategically. Finally, the moment arrived. The woman signaled to Sam and he quietly approached the horse, keeping low to the ground. He used a small piece of cloth to brush against the horse's flank, setting it free. The animal bolted suddenly, kicking up dust and causing a loud clatter. The gang members shouted and ran toward the source, exactly as the woman had predicted. Chaos erupted once again, and the canyon echoed with confusion and shouting. Taking advantage of the distraction, the woman led Sam through a narrow path along the canyon wall, carefully avoiding the sightlines of the distracted gang members. The path was treacherous, with loose rocks and uneven footing, but she moved confidently, guiding Sam with subtle gestures and quiet signals. Every step required attention, but the plan was working. They were moving closer to freedom without the need for direct confrontation. As they progressed, the woman explained her reasoning. She had observed the gang for some time and noticed patterns in their behavior, the way they relied on intimidation, their tendency to overestimate their control, and their lack of coordination when faced with unexpected events. By exploiting these patterns, she could turn a situation that seemed hopeless into one where they had the upper hand. Sam was amazed. Her intelligence and insight were as impressive as her courage. The canyon walls grew steeper as they moved forward, but the woman remained calm. She paused occasionally, listening to the sounds below and ensuring they were not being followed. Sam marveled at her ability to balance speed and caution, to move quickly without taking unnecessary risks. He realized that this escape was not only about physical ability, but also about observation, timing, and trust. After what felt like hours, they reached a narrow opening that led out of the canyon and toward the open plains. The view ahead was breathtaking. The sun was setting, casting a warm glow over the landscape, and the shadows of the canyon stretched long and dramatic across the ground. For a moment, the danger seemed distant, and Sam allowed himself a small sense of relief. They had made it this far without being noticed, thanks to careful planning and the woman's remarkable skill. But the woman did not slow down. She knew the gang was still nearby and they could regroup at any moment. She signaled to Sam to move quickly, and they proceeded along the path, using every bit of cover and terrain advantage to remain hidden. Sam felt a growing admiration for her. She was not just brave, she was strategic, resourceful, and determined. Her actions had turned a potentially deadly situation into one where they had hope and control. Finally, as the first stars appeared in the sky, they reached a point where the canyon opened onto a wide plain. The gang's voices were faint in the distance, still confused by the earlier distractions. The woman allowed herself a small smile, a rare sign of satisfaction. Sam felt a surge of respect and gratitude. They had escaped the immediate danger, and it was all thanks to her courage, intelligence, and careful planning. As they paused to catch their breath, Sam realized something important. True bravery was not only about confronting danger directly. It was also about thinking clearly, observing carefully, and using intelligence and strategy to overcome challenges. The woman had demonstrated all of these qualities, and he felt honored to be part of her plan. Together, they had managed to turn a situation that seemed hopeless into one filled with opportunity and hope. The plain stretched ahead, open and uncertain, but for the first time, they felt like they had a chance. The sun had set, the canyon behind them, and a new chapter of their journey lay before them. Sam knew that the next challenges would require the same careful planning, courage, and trust they had demonstrated so far. But for now, they had achieved a remarkable victory, a testament to intelligence, bravery, and the power of careful coordination. The open plain stretched endlessly before them, bathed in the faint glow of twilight. The air was cool, carrying the scent of dry grass and distant earth. Sam and the woman moved cautiously, but now their pace was steadier, confident from the success of the first phase of their plan. Yet, both knew better than to relax completely. The gang, though momentarily confused, was dangerous and unpredictable. One careless step, one wrong move, and the situation could spiral into chaos. The woman led the way, her senses alert to every sound and movement. Sam followed closely, aware of her quiet confidence. He had seen many courageous people in his life, but there was something unique about her. She did not act out of impulse or anger. Every step she took was deliberate, every decision calculated. Even in the heat of danger, she remained calm, precise, and strategic. Sam realized that her courage was rooted in intelligence, not just fearlessness. As they moved across the plain, they began to notice signs that the gang had regrouped. Dust stirred in the distance, and faint voices carried across the wind. Sam recognized the tone of urgency and frustration. The gang was searching for them, realizing that their captive had slipped away. The woman stopped and crouched low, signaling for Sam to do the same. She scanned the horizon, her sharp eyes catching the glint of a rifle barrel in the fading light. One of the gang members had spotted movement and they were closing in. Sam's heart pounded, but he kept his breathing steady. The woman whispered, "Stay calm. We have the advantage if we act smart." Her words were brief but full of authority. He nodded, trusting her judgment completely. They had made it this far because they had planned carefully, observed meticulously, and acted strategically. Now, the final part of their escape would require all of these skills, along with quick thinking and courage. The woman pointed to a small rise in the terrain, a low hill that offered cover and a better vantage point. "We'll use that to split them up," she said quietly. "If we can distract half of them, the rest won't be able to coordinate." Sam followed her lead, moving carefully, keeping low, and using the tall grass to conceal their approach. He noticed the gang beginning to spread out, searching methodically but unaware of the clever tactics the woman had already devised. Once they reached the rise, the woman quickly assessed the terrain. Small rocks, loose soil, and scattered brush could all be used to create diversions. She whispered instructions to Sam, who nodded and prepared to act. Their plan was simple in concept, but required precise timing. They would create multiple points of distraction, forcing the gang to divide their attention, while the woman took the lead in directly confronting the nearest group. Sam would cover her, ready to intervene if any situation became dangerous. The first distraction was subtle but effective. The woman kicked a small rock down the slope, sending it tumbling noisily across the plain. Several gang members turned immediately, shouting in alarm and moving toward the sound. The second distraction involved tossing a bundle of dry brush into a small crevice, creating the illusion of someone moving unseen. Again, the gang reacted, some charging toward the noise, others arguing over the best way to proceed. The plan was working perfectly. The woman's confidence never wavered. She moved with quick, precise steps toward the nearest group of outlaws, using her agility to stay just out of reach, while guiding them into a carefully chosen trap. Sam watched in awe as she manipulated the situation, using the terrain and the gang's predictable reactions to her advantage. It was clear that she had anticipated every move and had prepared responses for each possibility. Her intelligence and bravery combined to create a force greater than mere numbers could match. When the gang members finally realized that they were being outmaneuvered, frustration set in. They shouted and gestured wildly, but their efforts were disorganized and ineffective. The woman remained calm, keeping her focus on the immediate threat while preparing to exploit their confusion. Sam positioned himself strategically behind a cluster of rocks, ready to intervene if necessary, but trusting her instincts completely. At the critical moment, the woman sprang into action. Using a clever combination of speed and precision, she forced the nearest gang member off balance, causing him to stumble into another. The confusion escalated, and the remaining members of the gang struggled to regain control. Sam, following her lead, moved quickly to block a possible escape route, further enhancing the trap. The gang was effectively cornered, their advantage neutralized by the clever tactics of their former captive. Despite the chaos, the woman maintained her composure. She never lost sight of the bigger picture: survival and escape. Her actions were deliberate, calculated, and effective. Sam realized that what he had thought of as bravery was only one part of her strength. Intelligence, strategy, and careful observation were equally important. She had turned a potentially deadly situation into one where they held the upper hand, not through force alone, but through cleverness and planning. As the last of the gang members struggled to regroup, the woman took the final step in her plan. She seized the opportunity created by their distraction to slip past the nearest group, moving quickly and silently toward the edge of the plain. Sam followed closely, covering her movements and ensuring that no one could intercept them. Together, they moved with a coordination that was almost instinctual, a result of trust and careful observation. The gang, now fully aware that they had been outsmarted, began to retreat. Their shouts of frustration echoed across the plain, but it was too late. The woman had led them into a situation where their numbers and weapons mattered little. Sam and she continued moving, maintaining their focus and speed, leaving the gang behind. The woman's strategy had worked perfectly. Finally, they reached a point where the terrain offered natural cover and protection. A small grove of trees and a gentle rise in the ground concealed them from the remaining gang members. The woman allowed herself a moment to breathe, her calm expression softening into a small smile. Sam, equally relieved, looked at her with admiration. She had not only survived but had turned a dangerous situation to her advantage, demonstrating courage, intelligence, and strategic thinking in a way that few could match. They paused briefly to assess their position. The gang's voices were distant now, their shouts fading as they retreated. The woman spoke quietly, explaining her reasoning and highlighting the importance of careful observation, planning, and timing in overcoming challenges. Sam listened attentively, recognizing that what they had accomplished was not luck, but the result of deliberate thought, courage, and skill. As twilight deepened into night, the woman led the way toward a safer area, one where they could rest without fear of immediate pursuit. The plains around them were dark, but the stars above provided faint light, guiding their path. Sam felt a sense of awe at the journey they had undertaken so far. He realized that courage was not just about facing danger directly, but also about intelligence, careful observation, and the ability to act decisively in the right moment. By the time they reached a sheltered spot, both were exhausted but alert. The woman had proven herself not just as a survivor but as a leader, someone capable of guiding even the most cautious individuals through danger with skill and precision. Sam felt a deep respect for her and a sense of gratitude for being part of the escape. Together, they had turned what could have been a tragedy into a story of triumph and ingenuity. The night air was cool, carrying the faint sounds of the distant plains. Sam and the woman settled into the shelter, knowing that they were safe for now but also aware that the journey was not over. The gang, though temporarily defeated, could return, and other dangers awaited on the frontier. Still, they had demonstrated the power of courage, intelligence, and careful planning. They had turned a seemingly hopeless situation into one filled with hope and opportunity. As they rested, Sam reflected on what he had witnessed. The woman's bravery was extraordinary, but it was her intelligence, foresight, and strategic thinking that had truly made the difference. She had used every advantage available, terrain, observation, timing, and the gang's own mistakes, to create a path to safety. Sam knew that this experience would stay with him forever, a lesson in courage, trust, and the power of careful planning under pressure. By the time the first light of dawn touched the plains, they were ready to continue their journey. The gang was behind them, temporarily defeated, and the open landscape offered both freedom and uncertainty. Sam felt a renewed sense of determination. The woman had shown him that courage was not only about facing fear, but also about thinking clearly, acting wisely, and trusting oneself and others in critical moments. Together, they were capable of overcoming even the most dangerous challenges. The first rays of dawn stretched across the plains, turning the sky a soft pink and orange. The night had been quiet, except for the occasional rustle of wind through the grass and the distant call of a bird. Sam and the woman had spent the hours in the small, sheltered grove, resting and recovering from the tension of the previous day. Despite their exhaustion, neither of them had relaxed completely. They both knew that the dangers of the frontier did not disappear overnight. The gang, though temporarily defeated, could return, and the wilderness itself was unpredictable and harsh. The woman rose first, stretching her arms and moving carefully to avoid making unnecessary noise. Sam followed shortly after, still rubbing the sleep from his eyes. He looked at her and felt a deep sense of respect and admiration. She had survived a terrifying situation with courage, intelligence, and resourcefulness. Not only had she escaped captivity, but she had also outsmarted a dangerous gang, turning the tables entirely. Her bravery had been extraordinary, but her planning, observation, and quick thinking had been just as important. They moved cautiously, keeping low and using the natural terrain for cover. The plains were open, but small hills, scattered boulders, and tall grasses provided opportunities for concealment. The woman led the way, her eyes scanning the horizon for any sign of the gang or other dangers. Sam followed closely, learning from her careful movements and quiet focus. Every step required attention, and he realized that even in freedom, caution was necessary. As they progressed, they began to see the signs of life returning to the plains. Small birds flitted through the air, and the grass swayed gently in the morning breeze. The world was waking up, and with it came both opportunity and risk. The woman pointed out tracks in the dirt, footprints and wagon marks that suggested the gang had left the immediate area. Sam felt a surge of relief. They had outsmarted the gang, but the woman reminded him to remain vigilant. "They might come back," she said quietly, "but we've earned time. Let's use it wisely." They moved toward a nearby creek where fresh water flowed gently over smooth stones. The sound was soothing after the tension and noise of the previous day. They paused to drink and wash, careful not to leave obvious signs of their presence. Sam noticed how the woman handled everything with care and precision. She did not rush, yet she was always aware of the surroundings, ensuring that every action contributed to their safety. Her intelligence and discipline were as remarkable as her courage. After refreshing themselves, they decided to put some distance between themselves and the canyon where the gang had been. The woman led them along a narrow trail that wound through rolling hills and scattered trees. Along the way, she shared details about the local terrain, pointing out areas that could provide shelter, sources of food, and places to hide if necessary. Sam listened attentively, realizing that her knowledge of the land was as important as her bravery. The ability to navigate the wilderness safely was a skill that few possessed, and she had it in abundance. Hours passed as they traveled, and the sun climbed higher in the sky. Sam felt a growing sense of admiration for the woman. She had not only survived against overwhelming odds, but had also taken control of the situation, demonstrating leadership, intelligence, and remarkable courage. He reflected on the journey so far, the tense confrontation, the clever diversions, and the calculated escape, and realized that every step had been a testament to her skill and determination. Eventually, they reached a small clearing surrounded by trees, providing a natural shelter and vantage point. The woman indicated that it was a safe place to rest for a while. Sam and she settled down, taking a moment to breathe and observe their surroundings. The plain stretched far and wide beyond the trees, but the clearing offered protection and a sense of security. Sam felt grateful for the woman's guidance and careful planning. Without her, he realized, their chances of survival would have been slim. As they rested, they discussed what had happened and what the future might hold. The woman spoke calmly, reflecting on the events and the lessons they offered. She emphasized the importance of courage, intelligence, and careful observation, explaining that bravery alone was not enough to survive on the frontier. Sam listened closely, absorbing her wisdom and insights. He realized that the experience had changed him, teaching him to value strategy, patience, and careful planning as much as raw courage. The day progressed, and the sense of relief grew. They had escaped immediate danger, and the gang was no longer a direct threat. Yet both knew that life on the frontier was unpredictable, and vigilance was always necessary. They moved quietly through the clearing, foraging for food, and ensuring that they left no obvious traces of their presence. Every step reinforced the lessons of the past day. Careful observation, strategic thinking, and trust in one another were essential for survival. By late afternoon, they reached a small settlement far from the canyon. Sam and the woman were greeted with curiosity and awe. The townspeople had heard rumors of the gang's captive and were eager to know what had happened. The woman recounted the story briefly, focusing on the cleverness and planning involved in her escape. She emphasized the importance of strategy, courage, and calm thinking in the face of danger. Sam observed as the townspeople listened intently, their respect for her growing with every word. The story of her bravery spread quickly through the town. People admired her not as a helpless victim, but as a skilled, intelligent, and courageous individual who had faced danger and overcome it with cleverness and strength. Sam saw firsthand how her actions had changed perceptions, inspiring respect and admiration. The woman had not only saved herself, but had also demonstrated the power of intelligence, planning, and courage to an entire community. Over the next few days, Sam and the woman helped the town with practical knowledge about the gang's tactics and the terrain around the canyon. Her insights allowed the townspeople to prepare better defenses and avoid future dangers. Sam continued to assist, learning from her experience and gaining a deeper appreciation for her skills. Together, they contributed to the safety and well-being of the settlement, turning their personal struggle into a lesson for the wider community. The woman's impact was lasting. The townspeople never forgot the courage and intelligence she had displayed. Stories of her escape and clever tactics became part of the local lore, told and retold to inspire others. Sam, too, carried the lessons with him, understanding that bravery was most effective when combined with careful observation, planning, and strategic thinking. He felt honored to have witnessed and participated in such an extraordinary display of courage. In the end, the woman chose to continue her journey, walking into the wilderness once more, her spirit free and unbroken. Sam watched her leave, knowing that she would carry her intelligence, courage, and experience wherever she went. Her story remained with him, a reminder of what could be achieved through bravery, careful thinking, and determination. The frontier was dangerous, but those who faced it with courage and wisdom could shape their own destinies. As Sam returned to his own life in the settlement, he reflected on the events and the remarkable individual who had changed everything. The woman had shown that true strength was a combination of courage, intelligence, and careful planning. Her actions had not only ensured her survival, but had also left a lasting impact on everyone who witnessed her bravery. Sam knew that the lessons he had learned would guide him for the rest of his life, shaping how he approached danger, decision-making, and trust in others. The plains stretched endlessly before him, open and uncertain, but Sam felt prepared. He had seen courage in its purest form, and had learned that intelligence and strategy were as vital as bravery. The woman's legacy was not only her escape, but also the example she had set, a demonstration of what could be achieved through careful thought, quick thinking, and unwavering determination. The frontier continued to hold dangers, but Sam felt confident that, armed with these lessons, he could face whatever challenges lay ahead. And so, the story of the brave Apache woman and the young cowboy came to an inspiring close. Their journey had been filled with tension, danger, and uncertainty, yet it had also shown the power of courage, intelligence, and trust. The town remembered her bravery, Sam carried her lessons forward, and the frontier, vast and wild, had witnessed the triumph of skill, courage, and determination. It was a story that would be told for generations, reminding everyone that even in the harshest circumstances, bravery and intelligence could overcome the greatest challenges.